But let's jump into an issue which threatens to divide the Liberals' annual group hug, which starts tomorrow in Kelowna. A Trudeau tax fairness push that would prevent small businesses, medical practices, and farmers from splitting incomes with family members and setting aside funds inside their businesses for retirement is getting a very rough reception, even from inside the Liberal caucus. Here's Finance Minister Bill Morneau explaining the plan this afternoon.
We're talking broadly about three prospective changes to the tax system that would create a level playing field for the future. One of them, which is I think the one you're referring to, which is the ability for people to sprinkle income to family members that aren't in their business. We've estimated to have about a $250 million impact. But more importantly, we're focused on the long-term issue of making sure that we have a system that's appropriate and that people have incentives to get into small business, but aren't having advantages that are ones that other Canadians can't have.
All right, let's get the pros and cons in this tax tussle, fair or foul. My two guests are here to debate that very question. Dan Kelly is the president of the Canadian Federation for Independent Businesses, and he's not very happy with the proposal, to understate the obvious. Michael Wolfson is an University of Ottawa professor who sees things quite differently. Let's start with you, Michael. If the goal is to make the system fairer and not hurt the middle class, are these proposals a legitimate move to level the playing field?
By and large, I think they really are. The devil, as they say, is always in the details, so it'll depend on specifically how they're implemented. And there are several facets of them. You know, the business about income sprinkling or income splitting. You know, that's clearly been a problem. It's unfair. The tax system has been taken advantage of over the years in an increasing measure in ways that I don't think really were intended by Parliament.
Is it too strong to say they're tax cheats, or are they just taking advantage of a system that was there for the taking?
They're not tax cheats. Tax avoidance is perfectly legal. The issue is that it's a complicated part of the Tax Act. And originally, you know, you write a bunch of rules in the legislation, and then clever tax accountants, tax lawyers figure out ways to help their clients, which is precisely what they're paid to do. And they outsmart the original legislation, and from time to time, the Department of Finance, the Minister of Finance has to come back and say, wait a minute, this is going in a direction that's too much of a hit on the tax revenues. My estimate was that the splitting part is costing $500 million a year at least.
Before I get to you, Dan, I just want one more clarification. Justin Trudeau vows to protect the middle class, and some people think this hurts the middle class, does it?
Well, there's a lot of discussion about where the middle class starts and ends. But if you're over $100,000 a year, I suspect most people would agree that's no longer middle class. At the least, it's upper middle class. And again, depending on how the rules are actually written. But our data show that there's very few people under 100K, if you measure their income properly, who are going to be affected. Most of them don't own these, even if they're small businesses. Like Dan and his colleagues have published these outrageous numbers on how many small businesses there are. Fine, there's lots of small businesses, but most of them aren't going to be affected.
All right, Dan, over to you. I mean, he said this legitimate way to close a tax avoidance loophole, and it's not really hitting the middle class very hard. What do you say?
Well, look, the word loophole is one of the reasons why small businesses are so upset with the government right now. Every time Bill Morneau uses the word loophole, businesses think that somehow they're cheating the tax system and they're being accused of offshore money, which is absolutely not the case. These provisions, though, were baked into the tax code years ago for legitimate reasons, to help the business grow. These are not expansions of measures that tax accountants have figured out. These were the intended purposes behind many of these measures. And what's happened, though, over the last little while is that the government has been successful politically to be seen as going after the rich so that they can pass more money to the middle class. The problem in Canada right now, I think we're running out of rich people, and so now they're going after some middle-income earners.
I don't think there's any shortage of rich people, and I also think it's inaccurate to say there have been no changes. Maybe the specific provisions that are being exploited for income sprinkling, as the minister calls it, haven't changed, but the tax rate difference between having money in a small business and having money directly as a salaried or self-employed person has widened. So the incentive in terms of differences in tax levels has grown quite substantially.
But the income sprinkling that is one of the big bugaboos in this whole package here is looked at as a business, as a family business venture. And the way that businesses earn income, the way that they spread,
the only people who have families,
the way that a business is actually taxed needs to be considered, I think, a little bit differently than that of the average individual. In fact, even if you were trying to do apples to apples comparisons, the tax accountants, the tax advisors are suggesting that the tax rate, the effective tax rate on business is going to be about 73% in many situations.
I've seen those numerical examples produced by the tax accountants, and they're really cooked. They're assuming that the changes would come in and people wouldn't rearrange their affairs. That's not what would
the
happen.
difference between an employee and an employer is quite
the
profound.
top marginal rate, 50%, like everybody else.
The difference between an employee and an employer is quite profound, right? If you're a business owner, everybody in your household is affected by the success or failure of that business. Often your home is mortgaged in order to start up the business. The spouse, the reason we call them mom and pop businesses is because mom and pop are both working in the business.
But tell me, what is the impact of this going forward? If it goes through without, they got a consultation period till October, but if nothing changes, what are you predicting actually happens? It's not a lot of money here. We're talking about $250 million.
$250 million.
Up to $500 million is what Michael says.
One thing that this happens immediately, it creates massive uncertainty on the part of business owners. There will be about a decade of time spent by business owners looking at ways to restructure their business. The boon will be actually for advisors and accountants to try to and lawyers to restructure these businesses to ensure that they don't end up getting sideswiped. So the uncertainty, though, is the enemy of business growth and expansion. Businesses are going to spend a lot more time worrying about their structures than they are about growing or hiring, and that's the exact opposite of what we want. On top of that, we believe that this is going to suck a lot more money than is expected out of the tax system altogether.
Quick last word to you on that, Michael.
Well, I think the uncertainty, the minister in this morning's Globe and Mail said that there would be no retroactivity, so it's all going forward stuff. And businesses face all kinds of uncertainty. I think that this is not unique. And coming back to the family business, there are all kinds of people in this economy who work, and their spouses and children are equally at risk. Indeed, low-income workers are often more precarious.
They'll start in the hole.
Very quickly to you, though, Dan, is there a political price the Liberals will pay for this?
I think so. I mean, the people we're hearing from, we just delivered 15,000 signed petitions this morning from CFIB members to MPs across the country. I think a lot of those people are Liberal supporters, and they run the risk of losing some of the people that are in their corner right now. That's something that I think any political party needs to take seriously.
Yeah, they'll listen. Okay, I'm sure they're going to get a lot earful at the caucus retreat starting tomorrow, so we'll tune in on that. Thank you both for coming in. Interesting discussion. We'd like to know what you think about this tax crackdown, and so here's how you can reach us: by email, Facebook, and on Twitter.